Hi, how's everyone going out there? Greetings to all citizens. Welcome to Star Citizen Live. I'm your special guest host for today, lead writer Will Weisbaum, and with me, if you guys would like to do the honors of introducing yourselves, even though I'm sure everyone knows who you are.
I'm John Crewe, the Vehicle Pipeline Director.
And I'm Paul Jones, Art Director.
Now, we're going to be talking all about spaceships. We have questions from the Spectrum Forum all set up to go. But if you have any questions during the live stream, please feel free to ask them in Twitch or in Spectrum. Just make sure to preface your question with the word question in brackets, and Tyler Witkin will be on the job trying to pull those out so we can get those answered for you. Now, let's get right into it. First of all, congratulations to both of you on CitizenCon. I just want to say I really enjoyed the show.
It was a good one, wasn't it?
It was a really good CitizenCon. I had such a good time getting to meet a whole bunch of new faces, seeing a bunch of old faces, and yeah, it was pretty spectacular.
I just wish I'd taken more photos. I think I spaced out. I was just spent all the time waiting for my panel talk.
Yeah, I just wish I had more time around doing stuff because I was there for the start, then behind the scenes, then the panel talk, then the end.
Yeah.
It's just hectic.
It felt like such a long day and a short day. I kept time jumping. It was very strange.
Yeah, it was good though. Very good.
Well, let's get right into all about ships. The number one question, it's a multi-part question, which I think is cheating a bit, but I'm going to allow it here. Could you explain your plans for AI Blade, NPC crew, and computer components for our ships? Now, those seem to be very kind of separate questions, and unfortunately the first two systems are for gameplay designers and not the ship team. But we wanted to mention it just because it was the top voted question, and to inform the questions that come into live that we're trying to focus on more of the ship design and less on the gameplay function of this kind of stuff. I don't know, is the AI Blade as a ship component something that's in your wheelhouse, John?
It will be something that's in my wheelhouse eventually when we actively start working on it, because it will be a vehicle item that's part of the computer item which goes in the ships. So, yes, eventually it will be, but we're not currently, as of this moment, working on it.
Okay, but down the pipeline of being all these computer components being able to swap in and out, including one of them being hopefully the AI Blade to slot in there.
Yeah.
Cool. First question, done. We're really blazing. We're going to get this done in about 15 minutes, I think.
200 to go.
Question number 2, what can you tell us about the status of implementing physicalized components?
Well, so that's something that we can both talk about. Paul's getting worried he's not going to.
Is it?
Because for a lot of the ships, we deal with it at concept point now. Is we have the metrics for all the components.
Yes, we do. Yeah. So we have a new concept artist who started with us about 5.5 months ago. So started as a junior, and so we've slowly been running him through the mill, as we say, and so we've been giving him components to look at. I mean, it's a lot better now that we've got actual metrics. Yeah. Everything's better now that we've got metrics, and so it's really just sort of making our way through the massive list of manufacturers that you guys have made for us. Thank you, Will and Dave. And just figuring out what the style guide is, basically, from my side of things.
And then pretty much every ship in the last 2-3 years, concept-wise, has had the placement of them identified at concept. So when the production teams come to them, they're built. You would have seen it in sort of ships. Terrapin was at first big one that really went to town with the component hatches, so you could see where they all go. And then everything since then has them, and everything before then it has a plan for where they're going to go. In terms of actually putting the physical items in those places. So this quarter, one of the vehicle teams actually did the preliminary work to be able to place actual items inside the object containers, which can then connect to the vehicles, which gives us the ability to put them in place, and then down the line gives us the ability to shoot them from the outside, do all the physical damage to them. The stopping point has always been up until now, and still a little bit now, that everything inside an object container can't talk to the vehicle that it's within, which just stops like retaliator modules from progressing, because we needed to have the missile launchers inside the object container so it could all be swapped out with the entire bay. But we've got the groundwork for that now. Next quarter, we can hopefully do a little bit more. It's one of these long, ongoing core tech tasks that you just chip away a bit every month, and you slowly get close to the end. It's not a one line and bam, everything's done. You need to sort of re-archetype a few things, but it's still planned, still happening. We're slowly getting there. The biggest hurdle is really just the art's debt from having to go back to these old ships and put them all in the right place, or make space for them on ships that perhaps were never envisaged to have these items inside them. So the code will be done sooner than the art.
Now, as far as figuring out the placement of these things, is the guidelines, like I know for single-seaters, like it's all accessible outside of the ship, but yeah, for the larger ships, is it always all accessible from within with like the engineering compartments and stuff, or is there some that you have to EVA out, or how's that been going?
We try and do the majority from the inside, especially the key ones that are going to get the most use, like power plants, coolers, shield generators, quantum drives, the ones that get used minute to minute in the gameplay, which you're naturally going to find wearing out quicker, or their sub-items blowing sooner. So those ones we want on the inside, but there are still ones on the outside that some ships you need to get to. I think the Vanguard was the limit of how much stuff we could fit inside a spaceship.
Yeah.
And the artist on that had a field day trying to get everything fitting in everywhere.
No, I think that's going to be awesome once that comes online with the components and then the subcomponents of opening up and actually getting that feel of being an engineer on a ship. Because with my piloting skills, I feel like that's what I'm going to end up doing, is being in the back wearing my sweet coveralls. So next question is just kind of what's up with the Redeemer? Can you share anything going on with that? Is there any new news?
So, like we've talked about in the past, we're moving it more towards a gunship rather than a hybrid gunship dropship, because the Valkyrie and the Vanguard Hoplite have sort of taken the thunder out of the Redeemer's dropship capability. So we pushed the Redeemer all the way to gunship, and we have done a little bit more reconcepting on it. So we've made it look a bit more Aegis. Is fair to say.
So how did that translate into the concept of being more gunshipy?
It still looks like the ship that it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very clear from the start from Chris that he wanted it to, it was a fan-made ship, wasn't it? It was basically from, what was the competition called?
The Next Great Starship.
Yeah, that's it. So we've kept all the familiar features. So it's just been sort of a nipping and a tucking, and with the lessons we've learnt over the last years, it's just been sort of introducing a little more uniformity with the styling of Aegis. So yeah, when people see it, it shouldn't be a shock. We've had to obviously put some extra weapons on and stuff.
It's not like it was lacking guns and turrets to start with.
Yeah. So I think it was probably more of a little bit of a simplification in places, just a little less noise. And so yeah, we've done quite a lot of work. So we've used the kit from
the Aegis ships.
Yeah. So what was the one that you just mentioned there that Joe worked on? Yeah, the Vanguard. So the kit from that, basically, just to sort of reduce the workload, and so it gives the artist more time to focus on some of the trickier bits, turrets, etc.
And I'll just caveat all that with, just because Paul's team has done some concept doesn't mean that we're suddenly going to spring fully redone Redeemer out of nowhere. When we have more stuff to show, we'll show it and talk about it.
Oh, great job inserting that asterisk on the back end of that sentence. So just to clarify for some people, we throw out the term gunship a lot in this. How does a gunship differ than just a normal fighter, per se, like in combat?
So the gunships in Star Citizen, they're less about dogfighting. They're more about sort of... I'm going to do the Chris arm wavy combat explanation.
If it works.
Our fighters sort of zip and zoom around all over the place, whereas the gunships tend to just stick on one path. They have a lot of weaponry that can point in a single direction or can converge on a single point, so they can just hammer around it. The modern day equivalent is like the AC-130 gunships that just hover around a war zone and just in a big loop. They've got all their guns on one side, so they can just keep it all on target the entire time. And that's sort of what we have with our gunships. They have turrets, they have gimbaled weapons, and they can all align to one position to give a huge amount of firepower.
Okay, ships with guns. Got it.
All
We're
guns.
gonna take a question real quick from the chat. Is there still a walkaway door on top of the Carrick that you can walk around on? I didn't know there was one, but is it still there?
Yeah, the very old concept just had this singular door that came out of it.
Oh, was that a
at the top.
bathroom?
And went around the hangar bay, which you can still do.
Oh, you mean the swimming pool?
Yeah.
Right. I always call it the swimming pool. It looks like, you just take out the doors, put in the swimming pool, and you just, yeah.
Paul is not
anyway.
promising the Carrick Luxury Edition right now. That was just, it just looks like a swimming pool.
No, that's still there. You can still walk around the outside bit of it. It's not suggested. Like walking around on top of a spaceship is never a supremely wise thing to do, especially if it's moving. But you can. There's now 2 doors, so you can get to either side of the hangar railings.
Yeah. Well, just so you can reenact that scene from Teen Wolf is really the key thing. I don't know if that translates over. It was anyway. Do you have any news on the Drake Corsair? We're getting into just tell us where ships are in the production pipeline portion of questions.
This is where marketing get.
Oh, it's built and done, isn't it?
We released it a while ago. No, we didn't.
Oh no, that was the concept.
It's not in active production, but like Paul says, the concept's done. It's a recent concept, so it should be a pretty simple one to just.
Yeah, I'm
very
looking
pretty
forward to that
concept,
one.
Yeah.
It comes down to priorities, time, and the resources available. On one of the many times we've come and talked about the process, it's finding a slot of time where we have the right amount of people, the right amount of time to do something that size, and if it will fit in there, we'll put it in there.
Cool. Oh, a real specific question. Hold on to your hats for this one. Will the Banu Merchantman maintain its 3,500 SCU, or will it need to grow? I mean, that's, I don't know if we can.
That's
Oof. Tricky.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to commit to anything either way there because we've not started work on it. We want to do a bit more concept work on it with the lessons we learned from the Defender. For its size, I wouldn't be surprised if it has less than that cargo capacity. Similar case with the Carrick when it went down from 1,000 to 480 or 450 odd. We've learnt a lot since those early days. The metrics have changed. That's a lot of cargo. It will probably go down because the other way of just making the ship bigger to fit, that is already pretty big. So it's already like 160 meters in 2 axes, which is,
it's like a couple
I think,
men at this point.
the widest ship we have because of those wings.
Yeah.
If we start making it bigger lengthways to fit that in, then it's going to be humongous, and then you lose the benefits. Again, for the same reasons we tried to keep the Carrick at the same size, was you make those ships huge, you limit where they can go, and it's a mobile trading outpost. So it sort of needs to be more compact to fit places.
Yeah, you get that successful as a merchantman at that point, that's when you build your warehouse ship behind that follows along carrying all the stuff, then you move it over and then you sell it. And it's kind of like if you're that successful. So let's go to another question from the chat. We heard of the mole at CitizenCon, and it has been said that it will be fly ready when released, but will it be gameplay ready too? So will all the mining functionality be on board when it comes to light?
Yes, so it uses a lot of the same tech as the Prospector does. So it's got 3 mining cabs that use very similar multi-purpose, like they can mine and they can track to beam. We had to do some code in the background to allow like 3 mining beams to go into one cargo grid, but it does everything that the Prospector can do. It's got slightly larger. It's got what we're calling size 2 mining heads rather than size 1. So they are stronger. They go further. They can do a bit more than a Prospector.
What happens if you cross the streams?
We tried.
It's not like Ghostbusters.
We don't talk about those people anymore.
I think we need to name those size 2 mining lasers. So here's a question for you, Paul. When designing more industrial ships versus designing pure kind of combat ships, is it easier because they have a specific role to kind of imbibe that versus a general kind of fighting, or is it trickier, or how does the fact that it has a job that it's intended to do affect the concepting?
That's a good question. I mean, the nature of Argo anyway is, I don't know, it's a style that we all sort of enjoy anyway. You know, it's that industrial kind of thing. So it's just, I guess it's more complex. Like, I mean, the trick is really, with this ship, it was, we could have gone a really simple route and just turned it into, I don't know, a mobile mining platform in terms of, it looked like an oil rig kind of thing, and it got some pods attached to it. But really the trick is how to make this interesting, right? How to make it into something that we haven't already seen before, because nobody wants that. I don't, that's always the sort of mantra. If it's been done before, we don't want to do it. But then, there's always that familiarity that people like. Chris likes the ships to look, to sort of behave how they should, how people expect them to be.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. And so it's always that sort of tussle, like how much can we push, how much can we shove, what can we throw in that Chris might like, that's new but not too wacky. So we did have a really funny one where early in the process, remember Mr. Tickle?
I remember Mr. Tickle.
So we had it so that the arms, because you have the two mining cabs on either side and then one at the front, we wanted to give full accessibility. So we made the arms super long, so the one on one side could actually reach over, and mine on this side. So we've got some really hilarious movies of just these huge arms. So it was named Mr. Tickle basically. So it didn't stay, but I think where we ended up is really good.
Yeah, it's a cool looking ship.
Yeah, I do, and I love the coloring on it too. I can't wait to get my hands on it and give it a shot. Mm-hmm. Polaris, what's the deal?
Just straight in there.
Yeah, no front play.
No,
we're past that.
Again, it's not in active production, so there's no update on it at the moment.
I know that everyone in the company is required to look at a picture of the Polaris for a couple seconds each day, just to remind us. Sure
and go, I love you.
What's the status of the Caterpillar door elevators?
That's an interesting one, because the reason they're like they are at the moment, they clamshell open but they don't go all the way down, is because of a limitation with the elevator system we have at the moment, which we've not fully resolved, but we are on the cusp of improving, because essentially it needs to be a 2-state elevator where the door opens, so you can have it like that, and then goes down a second one. The tricky bit is it has so much hydraulic piston work on this bit that our transit system, which you see in all the landing locations, it can't deal with that at the moment. So we're having to expand the transit system, because transit system is not just used for those trains that go between like all the Lawville gates. We actually use it in the ships as well. So if you saw at CitizenCon, the Carrick has elevators, lifts inside with building block screens. Those are the lifts that have multiple stops, which is what we need for the exterior bit. But the current limitation is we can't do complex animated skin geometry alongside that, which when we do that, then we can get that. Then we can make all the ship doors, like the Caterpillar main entrance lift, as well as a similar one where it's got a big piston system. And that means we can have grids on elevators, which means loading your vehicles in and not having them fly off into space becomes
Which is
a lot more successful.
With the elevator improvements that we've seen coming on, thanks to the fabulous new building blocks UI text that we see in the elevators now and there, is that kind of stuff coming towards the ship as well with how we interact?
Yeah, any ships that have the building blocks or have the transit system as their main elevator will be able to now set up with the building blocks UI. So the Carrick will be almost certainly the first one that comes out with that, because we want to solve it all on that. That's our test case for doing it in ships.
What
from
about
a UI point of view, at least?
Going back to physicalizing like the interactions for doors and such like that, like what comes to mind is the Cutlass door that has that open close panel right next to the ramp. Is that going back to interacting with that versus looking at the ramp itself, or?
Yeah, that's something we need to do a pass on across the board, because we've got a very unclear mix of look at the door, look at the button, look at either of them, look at somewhere outside, and as we've talked about, Chris always wants things to be physicalized. So we will probably go to you look at a button to open all the doors. We just need to make sure that button is clear. Like, we don't want to open a door here with a button that's over here. It makes everyone's just going to get really confused by just standing in front of the door, hammering F, trying to get out, whereas we need to make it clear if we're going to go that way.
Is that something the concept team is thinking about now, that like we're doing the physicalized interactions and trying to get away from more of the magical inner thought stuff?
Good question. I mean, yes, we have, like, on what was the towing vehicle, the SRV. We considered on that. It's sort of one of the things that it's one of the sort of little things that does affect quality of life that often gets missed out in terms of with the concept there are so many things to think about to try and solve. Generally bigger issues, and so the deadline is just getting closer and closer and closer and closer. But in terms of just functionality, yeah, I mean, we are sort of trying to make it
easier on the interiors to solve.
Yeah. I mean, normally the buttons go next to the door, and that's it. It's just the excuse me, when it's particularly tall vehicle.
Do we just have this magical thing that just drops down like a button on a bit of rope that you?
So yeah, it's about how to signpost. If it's going to be on a landing gear leg or something. It's about how we sort of, how we work it out. I guess we do need to have a conversation.
Any old Cutlass owners will remember the magical blue button on the rear landing gear leg to open up the rear ramp that people spent hours trying to find.
So let's go now to another question from the chat. Will it be possible to sabotage a ship from the inside by removing or shooting components?
Absolutely.
Sweet.
So you'll have different levels of sabotage. So you could just flat out, if it's a size 1 or size 0 like vehicle or small item, they're man portable. So you could literally open the hatch,
pull it out,
entire thing out, chuck it out the window if you want it to be really trollish. Or you can damage it, you can shoot it, it will damage it a bit more, degrade the performance. Or you could just pull out like the sub-items inside, which
that would be...
they give a buff to the item's performance, which the player's probably used to using. So you take out all the buffs, then it starts going down, and you damage it a bit more, weaken it a bit more, just go around the ship, tinkering with all these things.
Oh man, that's going to be great when that comes online. That sounds very exciting. Man, I can see some missions. Man, make a little subcomponent that, very stealthily ruins a ship.
Can you restrict access?
You'll be able to restrict access. So with the security panel, you'll be able to say I'm locking all the doors.
Okay.
Some joker's on board my ship doing something, so I'm going to lock all the doors. And then I, as the captain, will just unlock them one by one and go, nope, nobody in here. So
right.
That's restricted to the main doors in the ship, not the individual hatches on there.
Okay.
Cool. Let's see. Has the recent feedback on the Carrick exterior altered your plans for the ship going forward? Oh, I guess that means a little bit of the kind of hubbub around the forums and stuff. I don't know how much you guys.
Was there a hubbub?
What, there was a hubbub?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out. I guess people have been voicing their opinions about the changes to the Carrick since the original sail concept art. And it's been, of course, like all our ships, when it goes from original concept to final release, things we learn, we change things, we grow, become better people. So I guess they've noticed some of these differences.
I'll let John talk about this.
We talked about this a lot in our CitizenCon panel as well, because we sort of preemptively knew that there would be a hubbub about it. So we spent a lot of time in our CitizenCon panel,
We can
which
just
is
leave it
now
there.
available to watch.
Yeah, let's point people towards that.
Even since that, there's been a few extra things that we want to look at just based on the sort of
the feedback
quibbles.
And I think also because the ship wasn't finished, but we were showing it, so it creates confusion about sort of what our final target is going to be.
The lighting in certain aspects of the demo that was shown as well sort of washed out a lot of the detail on the exterior. It's like it was a lot more detailed than you could see on the stream, which didn't help.
Yeah, I mean we've done some stuff actually today that you've not seen, I don't think, that I need to run past you.
So we want to stick to the release date rather than go, right, let's spend another 6 months changing everything. We want to stick to that release date. So we're doing some very minor sort of low. I was going to say low budget, but that's
low hanging fruit.
Low hanging fruit.
I guess it's obviously you have two camps of people. You have the old school and the new school. You have people like what came out originally and what was shown. And so
everyone always likes the thing before.
Yeah, so I think it's just a matter of, for me, like I'm just talking me personally here. I'm not representing anybody else. But there were some things that I think were missed off. There are easy wins that we can implement back in. So, and there's just again, when you really drill down and sort of look at some of the lines and how some of the surfaces interact with each other, there's lots of simple things we can do to sort of bring it back, lose a little weight, and add, I think, what fans are sort of expecting on this ship.
It's absolutely not going to go back to the thinness of the original concept, because to do that, we would have to cut features wholesale out of the ship, and if it comes down to cutting the visuals a bit versus cutting gameplay that's been promised, then
well, it's not even cutting the visuals. Like I like the look of the new Carrick, but I think
it's not going to be a massive. We're not talking like I'm going to transform into looking like John Crewe. It's not that kind of level of transformation. I can never be that good looking, but but it'll just be. I think there's some easy wins in there for sure, definitely.
Yeah, we're going to do some furkling.
Yep, furkling, not finagling.
Do that as well.
Okay, so in conclusion, we've been seeing the feedback. We also had our own thoughts to begin with because the Carrick was still a work in progress, and now we're gearing up for the big release, and I'm very excited to be able to fly that soon. So speaking of the Carrick, we talked about swappable pods during the presentation. Can you talk a little bit more about their function?
I can talk very high-level, loose about their function. So we build them as modular ones. The ones you saw in our panel and you'll see it release are the bog standard cargo ones. They have an elevated gantry through it, so you get more cargo underneath. One of the earlier versions we had no gantry, and the SEU capacity of the Carrick at that point was low 300s, high 200s. So by putting that gantry in, gave us almost 200 extra SEU across the ship, which is good. But like I say, they're modular, so we can do other versions in the future. One we've thought about, but it's not going to come with the release, is a ballista actually fits lengthways in those things. Squeaky tight, but it does fit.
Wow.
So you can do that. There's been talk of doing like a little science lab area. I think that was in one of the original texts that you and Dave wrote, perhaps, on the Carrick mini story.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So science lab gets an exploration ship. Makes sense. You drop off a little science pod to do your experiments on the surface.
Okay.
And hightail it out of there. But for now, all we're planning and committing to doing is the base cargo ones.
Cool.
Like the Caterpillar, we'll talk about more about those pods when we're at the point where we're actually going to physically make them.
Sounds good.
So you could drop off all 3 pods?
You can drop off all 3 if you want, and you can still get around the ship because there's a lift at both ends of the where the pods drop off. You don't need those pods in place to fly.
Right, okay. We haven't even looked at what the ship looks like without the pods.
Yeah, it's going to look interesting.
Yeah.
Something to look forward to. Let's see. With the Hercules Starlifter on the roadmap for 4.0, are all the variants being worked on simultaneously or just one variant?
So we're just going to work on the base one, the C2, I think is the base one. I've got so many ship names in my head at the moment. So we're doing the base one first, and then we will do the other 2 after that. They may not be straight after it. They may be straight after it. It depends how the base one goes. And if for some reason that ship moves around on the schedule, it's probably because we're going to just lump them all together and deliver them all as one chunk rather than individually.
But that really makes the sense to do it that way, to do it kind of the sequential of get your core ship done, because you learned so much during that process that if you're doing all at the same time, you would just be redoing work multiple times.
Yeah, and the A2 and the M2 have so much in common with the base one. You can't really start them before you've done the base one. When I say like moving around or delivering them all at once, I mean more that we would do all 3, or do the C2 first, then the other 2, and then hold them until one patch and give them all in one go, rather than the C2 in one patch, the M2 in another patch, the A2 in another patch.
Gotcha. So let's go back to the chat questions. Will scanners, radars that can detect minables be purchasable in 3.8 or something for a later patch? Like, because right now only mining ships can scan for minables, I believe, correct?
It's correct, but I believe there are some items already that allow you to. You can buy some radars or scanners from certain shops that do that already, because I have seen people on Spectrum and Reddit using non-mining ships to detect them. So that is more of a gameplay.
Oh, that's more of a gameplay question? That's fine. So we'll have to confirm that. There might already be, and we might be coming soon, I guess. We're going to leave that as a question.
A very similar answer for the Pisces Q&A, which I recommend everybody checks out.
Oh, yeah, that's released.
So at the moment, it is locked to... I think it is locked to some items, but in the future, we perhaps want to give it to all the items and just vary their ability at doing it. So maybe all ships could detect minables in the future, but maybe that's only 10 meters away for a really rubbish one. Whereas if you got the super duper turbo scanner, you could detect it 10 kilometers away, rather than buying this scanner can do it, this scanner can't do it.
That kind of specialized scanning gameplay is something I'm very much looking forward to. Like, you know, the idea of maybe having a scanner that can find biological life samples or like harvestables on a planet versus the minables, versus one that's specialized for ships and combat and all that kind of stuff seems like a really cool choice to have to make when outfitting your ship. Misc Endeavor, what's up with that?
Just rolling his surprise. Again, nothing's inactive development on that. It's one of those ships like the Carrick where we're going to have to go back and do a load of concept for it, because it was done a long time ago. The metrics may not be the same as they were when that was done. I can't remember who did the original Endeavour.
Was it Jim?
Jim or George?
I think it was Jim, but I think it's, you know, the overall style is good.
Yeah,
I think it's just a matter of, it's just a matter of what, you know, can we walk through the thing, and are the rooms in it that need to be in it, and will they fit in that body?
Yeah, a lot of the older ships we've come to, we found like the doors are not quite human door sized anymore. Like they just come up to here. So it's like as soon as you start fixing all the doors, then all the corridors have to get wider. When we get to concept in that,
that's quite a big one there, right? That's more like a end level kind of
explorer science hospital. It's a big spine with a ship on the front that you can outfit however you want.
I mean, generally we're sort of starting small and making our way up the scale.
How's
Ship as
that
well.
been like as we go down in time, as our skills improve, as our ships become more impressive, going back to those old concepts? Like we talked about the Redeemer a little bit earlier in the stream. Like, is that a fun challenge? Is it a little bit daunting because of all the attachment and feelings that go with these old concepts?
It depends on the ship. I mean, the Redeemer was quite a nice one actually. Went like touch wood. For me, it went smoothly. So, but there are other ones that are just really quite tricky, just because they're so sort of fundamentally broke. Possibly, the knock-ons are just massive, and so it's always a little bit hard, sort of, working on the older stuff, because you've got to,
There's attachment to those older ones.
Yeah, there's attachment, and then it's also knowing where you can push, where you can shove, because obviously Chris will have his favorite points as well, so we don't want to remove those by accident. And it won't, they shouldn't be like fundamental shifts, but when things get larger or fatter or longer, then obviously the vibe of the ship changes, and so that can have quite a knock on. So then it's okay, how do we visually rebalance it?
It's really awesome, because I think a lot of times for game projects, this is the kind of stuff that you would only be seeing a year after release, when like the fancy art book comes out and you get to see like that early concept all the way to what it was in game. But we get to experience it in real time, very much so, of seeing that learning process. So I think that's a little bit unique to us, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think that's one of our USPs.
Yeah. that level of interaction from the staff and backers, where it can have a difference, is something you don't really find anywhere else.
Go us. Will ships functioning as carriers be able to refuel and possibly rearm the vessels they carry? I think we just talked about this recently. Why did I see an answer to this somewhere? About being able to refuel the ships.
I think that's an answer for an upcoming Kraken Privateer Q&A.
Okay.
May or may not be live at this point.
Oh. Can someone confirm in my little Teams thing whether that's live already? We talk about that? Maybe I read that early. Let's go to a chat question. Some of the best in show ships have bugs with their decals. Is that going to be fixed?
Yes, they should all be fixed for 3.8 when that comes out. There was a few problems that we had I was at the venue at CitizenCon on the Friday night, about an hour before we were pushing the 372 live build, and we found a load of problems with the best in show ships that we had to roll back to a previous version just to get the patch out, because we were ready to set QA off and test in the patch, and we found this. Like the Caterpillar stopped flying, for example, which is a pretty big problem to have.
Yeah.
So we had to roll them back, and then we fixed it again for 3.8. So you should see the vast majority of those bugs fixed. Like the decals are not quite aligned. The Cutlass has some of the fuchsia in the wrong place. So did the Caterpillar, and some of the intensities of them were not quite right. But that's all fixed for 3.8.
Oh, awesome! Go us. Took care of that one. I wish I had a pen and cross it off. So let's see. We answered that one. What is the current plan for either spawning vehicles with other vehicles inside? Would we choose these to spawn at the same time, or once the ship's loaded in, you have to put it in? What's going on with that?
So it's going to be identical to how you customize your ship through the VMA, PMA. It's just going to show up as essentially another item port that the vehicle is attached to. So in the Constellation and Merlin scenario, the Merlin would come attached to that item port by default. You could unattach it if you didn't want to drag it around, or you could swap it out for the Archimedes if you wanted to. Same for ships that carry ground vehicles. They would just have an item port in the ground that goes, I'm a ground vehicle item port that's a size 1 ground vehicle, so I can put in a Cyclone, I can put in a PTV, I can put in a Rover, that might be size 2, but it's the same restrictions as we have on the VMA and the other customization. So if you haven't spawned the vehicle yet, you bring up your mobiGlas, change it, and then when you spawn it, that's what comes in. If you customize it after you've spawned it, then you have to store it and respawn it.
Okay, cool.
Or just load stuff in willy-nilly afterwards.
So yeah, if that fuel question was on the Pisces QA has been released. So go out there.
I think it's on the Kraken one. But
you said Kraken Privateer. Sorry, I misheard.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot.
I'm pretty sure the answer there is yes, but it takes it out of the motherships.
Which makes sense. Yeah, you just fill it from the fuel tank on board.
Yeah.
So what is the future plans for the 600i Explorer interior?
So yeah, this is another one that sort of fell into the we showed something and backers weren't too enthused by the 600i, and we learned a lot for the 890. We said we're going to go back and do stuff to the 600, which we will.
I mean, it's more of a dressing pass, right?
It's dressing. I know there was a lot of suggestions for that central area where people wanted like a big glass bottom to look out the bottom of the ship. They wanted more windows. They wanted like a double-story shark tank or something like that.
Right.
Just to make it feel a bit more
customizable.
On the touring one, especially, and the Explorer has got some weird quirks that we sort of learnt as we went through. But it will have a pass. Both of them will have a pass in the future, but it's not a priority to do.
Yeah, because it's already out already, so we're gonna find a time to slot that in, but it's not quite clear when yet. What's happening with the Hull C?
So we are one step closer now to do it on the tech side. So we've got rid of one of the blockers that we had. So now we're down to we really need docking, which is a step closer since we fixed the last blocker, which is actually CR's big physics refactor that he's been working on and is now in the game. So docking is now a lot simpler to do, which really helps because it was a big pain before that physics refactor. We need the supersized cargo doing, so we don't want to spawn a Hull C with 4,000 individual SEU boxes. That's just going to tank the frame rate in the server. So we need cargo to come in bigger than one SEU boxes, which benefits the game as a whole. And then the last bit, which the engine team will be working on soon, is allowing physics grids and vis areas to be transformable at runtime. So obviously the Hull C goes like that. We need that central spine area to have its physics grid go with it, because otherwise you're going to go halfway down it and then you're going to fall out into space. So again, those three big tech hurdles need to be overcome, and then we need a few months on the art side just to finish off. So we've got it essentially to final art, which is the 100% pristine version of the ship is done. Squadron use that for their scenarios that they have that need it. So you'll see on the Squadron roadmap the Hull C's there, but I'm not sure it's on the PU one now, or they're on like different progression amounts. It's because Squadron don't need the docking, they don't need the supersized cargo, they don't need to see it land. They can just get by with what we have. But the PU needs everything for it to function.
Cool. And what's up with the Hull D? No, I'm just kidding. I love when we add that secondary kind of movement on ships, like the hull expanding, or like with the Reliant, with the wings transforming. That's always something that emerges from the concept phase, right?
Yes, yeah, totally. I mean,
just trying to make my life
difficult. Yeah, it's always that, like we mentioned earlier, it's always that. How do we make it cool? How do we make it interesting? How do we do something that's hopefully not been done before? And then how do we make John's life difficult? So there's always a hey John, can I do this?
No. please don't.
So it's always pushing and shoving. So
yeah, because
that's the part I like.
interesting thing with the pipeline is that now that we have so much established stuff, that it's always a little more efficient to go with what has already been done before, like reusing the seat or the cockpit from a previous ship and saying, this is a stylistic choice. But then at the same time, we always want to push ourselves and we enjoy the more interesting kind of diversions from that. So
yes, definitely. So I think it's, yeah, you can get a little bit hamstrung, if that's the word, because you don't want to be creating extra work for for downstream teams. But then there are just some vehicles that are just like, okay, we're just going to have to create something new for this.
Yeah.
Because it's just part of it's one of the main ingredients. So without it, it just wouldn't be as cool.
Yeah, there's times you just have to bite the bullet and you go knocking on Bender's door. You go,
please, sir.
Please, can we have a new character animation for this super cool entrance? You never know what reaction you're going to get from that.
Speaking of, this goes to a question from chat. Have you ever considered the ability to be able to vault into the Cutlass side door?
Yes, so we have that sort of on the Valkyrie, but it's set up in a less than ideal way. There are actually ledge grabs on there, and it's something we want to do for the Cutlass as well.
Cool.
It's quite a way up. Like the Valkyrie has a little side step that folds down to enable it.
Yes.
The Cutlass
Yeah.
you're gonna have to be fit to jump up there to do a muscle up into the ship.
What are the systems required for Star Citizen ship combat move to time to disable over time to kill, particularly for multi-crew ships, or is the system we have currently the intention for the final game, and we're going to stop working on it? No,
So,
this part.
what we have now is definitely not the final intention.
Yeah. Alpha.
Two big things to moving to time to disable rather than time to kill. One, physicalized components like we talked about earlier, so we have to have the items in the right places and be physicalized so you can target them. And two is moving to a more, I'm going to keep saying physically based damage system. So something we've talked about in the past, and we're still going to do it. So rather than bullets doing 10 damage, they come with a velocity, they come with an energy and a mass, and the game works out how much impact that is, which gives the penetration, which over time weakens the structure of bits of the ship rather than just ticking down a health pool. So when we have all that, then you naturally get items failing, which impacts other areas of the ship rather than just I hit the Gladius on the nose with my fist a million times and eventually
the whole thing is going to shit. Yeah.
Whereas this will just be you'll be hitting it forever, and it's like your impact is not enough to do anything. So
yeah, it will be sad when the day comes when you can't just take your pistol out and shoot at one spot for a minute and have the whole ship blow up. But I guess it will if you hit the right spot down the road with the physicalized damage, which will be cool. You have to shoot the little fuel cap or whatever on the ship. Now, in terms of like implying how tough a ship is, how does that balance between the design and the art of how a ship looks? Like, is that in the discussion of, like, this is supposed to be a tougher ship, so we want to make it look that way with more bolted-on parts or thicker joints and stuff like that?
Yeah, I guess we factor it in quite a lot. I mean, there's always that discussion of what design want, and it's like, what's the ship's special ability, or what's the hook? And so, if something has extra armor or can take a pounding, we generally try and put that in the visuals. So, like the Terrapin,
compare the Terrapin to like the Pisces,
the Nautilus, like they all have that sort of heavy feel. I guess we've got one maybe coming out soon that's got some of that too. So yeah, that's always taken into account.
Just to skip ahead a few questions, this physicalized damage system that we're talking about, do you have any view on when that might be coming to the PU? It's on the S42 roadmap, apparently. I'm going to trust that this question is right. But is that just this year?
People have started doing the initial groundwork on it. So from a design side, we've worked out all the formulas and the parameters that we need and the materials that are going to impact it. And we're in the very early stages of having some very brainy programmers work out all the maths behind it.
So it's definitely slowly progressing. We don't know quite when it's going to hit yet, but it should have a pretty cool impact on the game when it comes along.
Yeah, it's gonna change a lot.
Will players be able to have the ability to hail their ship when they're in a runabout, like a smaller vehicle, snubcraft, a ground vehicle, and have the ramp open up or have the hangar open up?
Personally, that's something I think we should do. It's just like, I mean, you can do it now with your Tesla and your cars. You can get them to come to you and turn on the engine and start. So it seems like something we should do, but it's not one of those things that I personally can go, yes, we're going to do that, and we're going to do that next week.
Yeah, so something to explore possibly as a cool option of having like a mini ATC aboard your craft that you can hail. And
yeah, because one of the traps that people fall into is they think that this thing, like that example, using it on your vehicle, that's a vehicle feature, but it could be, but we need to build it in a way that the whole game can benefit from it. So if we built it vehicle specifically, you could be outside your research station that you've built with your Pioneer, trying to talk to it on your mobile glass, and it's going, well, I'm not a vehicle, so I don't care. So it needs to be built with a general gameplay team that works in all the scenarios. So I could be stood and call a hangar to open. I can call my ship to open. I can call my buggy to open. I can call my habs to change the air in them or do something.
Yeah.
Get the bed heated up to a nice toasty temperature. Will the Prowler's phalanx shields be functional when it goes flyable?
So it's going to be like the Defender, where they're going to have not the full phalanx shield behavior, but a very it's either unique or it's not very unique, a different behavior to our current shields. So the Defender ones, which I'm sure you can correct me if I'm wrong, are Tavaran inspired.
The band who borrow from all sorts of cultures.
Borrow. They have a very quick sort of, you can move them around the faces very quickly, which sort of gives that phalanx shield behavior, and you can also harden them very quickly, which to get the best of, you need a second person sort of managing your shields. But the upside of that is they block all the damage. Like unlike all the other shields, they block 100% of ballistic ammo coming through. They block 100% of energy ammo. So if you've got that second person doing that shield management job, you can do pretty well with them. And it's going to be that same sort of stuff in there in the Prowler for release.
Art-wise, how's it been approaching the Xeno ships versus the human-manufactured ones?
It's tough.
I was expecting like fun, exciting, but just a deep sigh, and it's, oh man.
They've just been kicking our ass. They're just more, just by the very nature of them, they're complex because, me personally, I don't want to fall into that trap of, okay, so the race build their ship and their architecture and their cups and saucers all in this specific way. You know, like it's always nice to sort of have that breadth of their universe. You know, obviously with the human stuff, you know, we're all familiar with it, so it's a lot easier. Like, okay, this is industrial, this is luxury, this is whatever.
Aliens would look at us and be like, they have no stylistic cohesion at all. Humans are all over the place.
So it's, you know, we've done a lot of work. And we still need to do more work, basically. Like, I think it is just tough because you're just having to push in different ways that your brain just isn't used to, and it's like, okay. And I think where we've ended up for the Prowler is super awesome. Like, you know, we took what we did years ago, and you know, we were time bound at that point. We did the best we could. But what's happened to the interior now and how that's sort of expanded in terms of its style is a real nice feature that we can, you know, put on any other ships.
The bird cage aspect of it is something that was never there in the original concept and adds a huge amount. And
you mean the tree? The 3D printed tree kind of.
I think it looks like the inside of bird skeletal structures, that kind
Yeah.
of cross section.
Yeah, and the same with the Banu. The Banu, it took quite a while for us to get the Defender to where it is.
Yeah, the production side of the Defender is obviously, we talked about it before, that it just took a long time just because of the two styles. Like the inside is very different visually to the outside. The outside is sort of this beaten copper metal crab shell, and the inside is like a full-on
Geiger-esque
interior. And normally you just wouldn't have those two things next to each other, but we had to somehow make them transition without just looking like someone had just slapped a metal shell on an alien.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot more work that we can do. Like we've done, it was either last year or this year, time just flies. We did a whole nother pass on the Defender interior spaces. And that's moved us along a certain amount, and now we need to do essentially what I hope will be the last round, where we properly define for the artists. Okay, everything works like this. Engineering is like this, habitation's like this, lighting is like this, the materials are like this, and so.
Did you mean the Merchantman, not the Defender?
Oh yeah, sorry, the Merchantman. Sorry.
Like, we're going to reconcept it?
No.
Yeah, because even though the Defender had helped set some kind of Banu guidelines, the Merchantman, it's more of a civilian ship versus the more military combat ship of the Defender, so there's differences there and just so much more areas than you have in the Defender.
Yeah, and it's just knowing where to experiment, basically, what to push on, what to retain. So it's just that constant iteration, refinement. I mean, I think once the Merchantman comes out, I think it should be pretty special.
Yeah.
But it's it's going to be complex. It will.
Once I can sleep again after the Carrick is done, the Merchantman is the next one.
Will take its place. Yeah.
In your nightmares, dreams, wake up in a cold Merchantman sweat. We got about 3 minutes left. Trying to see if we have a good final question. If you could just quickly say the status of all ships. No. Let's see.
They're all done.
Somewhere between not started and done.
I think a point here and little notes from Jared is just, setting that because we can't work on all the ships at once. I know there's a lot of ships that you put a big investment as a purchaser of a supporter of this one ship, and you can't wait for it to come out. And sometimes it can be a little frustrating waiting for it. But we are moving our way through the pipeline. Yeah. We're seeing stuff come out, and so.
Yeah, essentially the vehicle team globally is about 5 individual teams. Those teams could be one person. They could be 5 people on a team. So at any one time, we can only really be working on 5 things, and given our quarterly release structure plus our Squadron requirements, like sometimes you won't hear from us for a while. That's probably because we're doing something for Squadron, or we're working on something that people don't know about. And if one team's working on Squadron, one team's working on a straight to flyable that isn't announced, that only leaves 3 people, and usually we're 6 to 9 months, if not 12 months ahead from like the stuff we're working on now. You won't see till you won't see released until the middle of next year. So there's only so much we can do at any one time, and things do change. It's a very fluid situation.
Yeah. But I think, the upside is that, we're solving a lot of problems, aren't we? So basically when the ships do come out, they're going to be, we'll be maintaining that quality bar that we're trying to hit.
Definitely.
Fantastic. Final question. Do you think I should free Jared and release him once more?
No, just leave him where he is.
Yeah. Just.
All right, there you have it. Well, thank you both so much for joining me. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy days. And thanks for letting me be your special guest, everyone, in watching live. I hope you all have a fantastic week, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much for all your support of Star Citizen. It is so appreciated. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertsspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.